All right, Rob, we were talking on Shop Talk about the beefs, Shannon versus Shaq and Kendrick versus Drake and so on and so forth. And I said there's one out there that we're missing, and this was it. Austin Rivers versus James Jones. And it really was kind of, at least initially, Austin Rivers versus the entire NFL. But here's what Austin said to get himself in, I guess, hot water.
We got to get you outside of that football lane, man, where the guaranteed contracts are, where the best athletes in the world are. That's us. I could take 30 players right now in the NBA and throw them in the NFL. You cannot take 30 NFL players and put them in the NBA.
Whoa. It's because you only allowed 5 on the court. Let's all relax.
It's because you get a break every play. All you got to do is catch the ball and run north or south.
Listen, our sport.
It ain't complex.
I mean, look, we talked about this, right? Austin overstated. And look, they're in a argument or, just excited conversation. He probably didn't mean 30 literally, but it's probably more like between 5 and 10, Rob, that could play in the NFL, like now that you could take and put him in the NFL. But that sparked, obviously, NFL players didn't like it. And Rob G, take it from here, because it's been back and forth with several guys, but mostly James Jones, our own FS1 Fox Sports colleague James Jones.
Yeah, you've had
the Packers.
Chris Long, J.J. Watt, Jeff Schwartz, the weekend guy here, all going. George Reiser got involved in it, but the one who's been the most vocal has been FS1's James Jones, former Packers wide receiver. So he first took really offense to it when the audio first came out, and he was saying something to the effect of, Austin needs to put more respect on our sport. It's not an easy game. If you would have came out there, you would have quit immediately because you would have got broke, and talk about how soft NBA players are. Austin Rivers responded, say he didn't like that, say I never heard of you, talking about I barely made the NBA, but I was a lottery pick. Like, what are you saying? Then James Jones felt like he dropped the hammer because he suggested that Austin Rivers was a bust.
He didn't suggest
While saying it, Austin Rivers is a bust. You average 9 points a game, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, only because your dad, where you were taking in the lottery,
here we go.
Says, I'm not going to go back and forth with you. If I was 6'4", 200, maybe you should have tried football. You might have had a better career. And then Austin Rivers came over on the top rope, and today he said, I'm not talking about it anymore, but if we want to talk numbers, let's talk about the $57 million I made in my career. Then you made 17, and I made more than that in one season. So it's been going on all week. I think this is the end of it, but that's the gist of it. Your thoughts?
What you think, Rob?
I feel bad for people that this is what I mean. I just don't understand. Like people need, I guess, feel like they need something to be worked up about. So what if he thinks that there's, and Chris, you could have a conversation about it, but now you get all personal. I don't understand that part of it. You want to have a debate or have a conversation. When you get into name, we talk about it's the lowest common denominator when you get into name calling and all kinds of other situations. That's when I turn off. Like if you want to have a debate and if Austin Rivers laid out, Chris, well, let me name a couple players who play basketball and not football in college, and they wound up being Pro Football Hall of Famers or what, whatever it is.
Right.
And then the other comeback is, well, what about like there could be an argument or a conversation, but to go like gutter and foul right away, that's when I tune out. I'm not interested in that stuff, and I know a lot of people are into it. I talked about it before. Lowest common denominator, Chris, and people are into that stuff. I'm just not, and maybe I'm just too old. That stuff doesn't do anything for me.
No, people are into it. It's entertaining for a lot of people. And I agree, like, debates are fine. Back and forths are fine. But even, like I said, with Kendrick and Drake, I mean, it just devolved into such just dark name calling, accusations.
Chris,
that
call
I don't
somebody
know how founded they are. Right.
A pedophile? Like,
right, you better have receipts with that.
Come
and Drake
on,
says
man.
some stuff he need receipts for too. Like, and so, yeah, I agree. And this, look, I get why NFL players were offended. Because it does. I mean, if if somebody said, you know, a lot of these NFL guys could go to the NBA and play well, the NBA players would be offended. You know, that's your profession, man. You're one of only a handful that got to that level, and you know how hard it is, and you know how much harder the NFL is physically, at least, you know, as far as the collisions, the hits and stuff like that, than the NBA. So I get why they're upset, but I think you make a good point that, you know, you want to just keep it on the credentials. And I mean, James called him a butt. He went at his credentials, you know. And I do think, Rob, in fairness, if somebody just said, I mean, you get upset with with athletes that jump in the media because you're like, look, I know what it took to get to where we're at and be journalists.
No,
and
I
so
don't have a problem with
in there.
I don't have a problem with people being analysts. I'm talking about when they prop them up and act like they're reporters or that.
Well,
that's my
okay,
only.
But that's similar.
That's my only
that's
issue.
really no different.
That's my only issue.
Than
I don't.
an NFL player being upset because Austin Rivers said, "Man, we could take 30 of these cats."
But at least he has some. At least
league.
he has some examples. I that's all I'm saying is like his is not that. Antonio Gates is probably who was the other player we talked about earlier? Rob
Well,
G?
the other ones played a little. Tony Gonzalez,
Jimmy Graham,
Julius Peppers,
Yeah,
Jimmy Graham.
like
most of them played in college, both sports, football and basketball. So, but still, I mean, I do think there are NBA guys that could play in the NFL. I think you could take some and you gave them a training camp, maybe a year to get ready, and they would be able to do it. But I also think for NFL players, I don't think you could just take, I don't know if you could take hardly any, if any NFL players, and they could play in the NBA like with a year of training or something like that. But I do think there are NFL players that had they chosen basketball instead of football when they went to college, that I think there might be some that could have made the NBA. Because, Rob, you know, I mean, Deion Sanders was a fantastic basketball player as well as baseball and football in high school. A lot of these dudes were high school basketball stars. Greg Jennings, our own Greg Jennings, on our show all the time. Rob, he got recruited by Michigan State to play basketball. So, like, Greg was a great player in Michigan where they got hoopers.
Ephraim played basketball, too.
Ephraim played basketball in college. So
doesn't mean that they were going to make it to the NBA. A lot of guys, but back then, Chris, a lot of good athletes played multiple sports. It doesn't mean that they were going to be – and they, for the most part, people pick, you know, sports because they know what they're really best in. It's funny. I told you that, you know, or their size or whatever. You can look at some
what
players.
They think is easier to make it to the league.
You know, I think I told the story before about David Justice went to college to play basketball, and they ran him, Chris. They were doing the drills and all that. He didn't want to do them, and he went and he saw the baseball team over there playing. And just decided to go out for the team
and drinking beer in the dugout.
You know what I mean? And but he made it to the major leagues because a scout was at a game where he hit 2 home runs out of the ballpark, Chris, and that was it. Right. That really is all. He said that's how he got a baseball.
They're fantastic athletes, and so you know, a lot of them could, you know, maybe play a different sport. But yeah, it's interesting because the beef is definitely in the air. I don't know what's going on, Rob. I mean, you and I have a show based on beef, The Odd Couple, based on debating and going at, and we don't go at it like these dudes are like, you know what I mean?
No, and it's so personal. I just like, isn't it, Chris? It just seemed like it's real personal.
Well, and
like,
again, I'm not gonna get on. Let's not get. We can get on a high horse maybe individually, but look, we see two journalists. One of us is a great friend of ours, Stephen A. And
I didn't like that either.
Worked with him and Whitlock really. Yeah,
I didn't like that either. I mean, I'm gonna be.
It got ugly.
I didn't like that either.
Yeah, I agree because I don't generally like. I don't see it as my place to. I mean, get in beefs with other reporters.
If you have an issue to me, if you want to have a conversation privately, or you want to yell at each other on the phone for 5 minutes. You know what I mean? But the public, part
Well,
of it,
'cause-
I guess, is what I have an issue with.
Because at the end of the day, Rob, you're entertaining people. You're just entertaining, and I don't mean like in a good way necessarily.
No, right? People
It's
love
like
that stuff, Chris.
Yeah. It's like people are, and sometimes people are laughing at you. Sometimes people think it's ridiculous, but it's entertaining, And so, but I think ultimately what I'm saying is I do think I think it would be easier for some of these NBA players, just a few, to move to the NFL. I think of Anthony Edwards. I think LeBron, Rob. I think LeBron would have been a Hall of Fame football player had he chosen to go to the NFL, because he was phenomenal in high school and Ohio. Well, Ohio is a football state. Ohio is not a basketball state. It's amazing that LeBron came from Ohio, because it's not like one of the basketball hotbeds. But it is a football state. It is a hotbed football state, top probably 7 in the country as far as states and high school football. And so for him to be dominant, and I know the school he went to, they were dominant football school and basketball, but more so football. And he was great. So I think with his speed, his size, he is one I think would have been like Hall of Fame tight end or something like that.